So in the same way, I think if people would just look at the fact, quit believing the lie, quit just accepting. In fact, I ran into a lady who had an Obama jacket that she had made the other night. And I asked her, why do you like Obama so much? Well, he's an honorable man. He has integrity. He doesn't lie. He doesn't do. And so, of course, I start to kind of press her on a few of the issues that were obvious, things that were, pretty much mainstream media had covered. And, of course, she didn't want to hear any of that. They love the lie. They don't have the facts to defend what they believe. And when you confront them on it, boy, they just get irate and they shut down. They don't even want to have that conversation anymore.
I've talked to a lot of Obama supporters on the ground, and they say, well, he's not corrupt, and he tells the truth, and he cares about the people, and he brought change. He intensified the wars. He expanded the secret arrest. He hired nothing but lobbyists. He made government more secret.
Surrounded himself with the banking elite. Continue to pour billions and trillions. Run up a debt bigger than all the other presidents combined before him. Talked about transparency, yet not one of the bills have they posted online for people to read before they pass it.
But that's the issue, Darrell. I'm going to ask you this, because then the Obama supporter says, well, so what? At least he's better than Bush, as if we're saying Bush was good. No, the whole system's corrupt. But when you try to reach out to people, when you try to wake them up, it's taken me years to learn all their tricks. How do you explain that to somebody when it's a matrix of lies? I mean, here's a quick example. Obama took 50,000 U.S. troops out of Iraq and put 50,000 more contractors in. Obama put 18,000 more U.S. troops in when he first got elected, when he first got into office, and then another 22,000. So that's 40,000. But they never talk about that. It was a footnote. And then the whole debate was, should he escalate 48,000 more to make it look like he's anti-war? Oh, he's getting pressured to put 48,000 more in, and he won't make a decision. Oh, look, he's a peacenik, by making it a political football between left and right. Oh, Obama's against the war. Conservatives now become pro-war again. Democrats are like, well, he's not putting more troops in when he already put 40,000 more in. And I don't know what you call that trick, but that's just one of hundreds of tricks. And I know all their tricks now, and it makes my head hurt, Darrell, that I can't explain it to people. That they don't want to know. They don't want to understand. I mean, what would you call that trick? A bait and switch?
Well, just pure deception, first and foremost. But, yeah, it's what is the norm now. And I think scripturally speaking, it really makes sense, because it says there will come a time when people will say that evil is good and good is evil. And that's exactly what we see. We see people constantly, continually worship this guy. I mean, they're teaching our kids to sing songs to him and so on and so forth, and they dismiss and don't even want to know the true facts of what's going on. In fact, it's interesting that I share with people all the time that, and it's just like this information about the New World Order and what's going on in the world today, the evil atrocities these guys commit. You got to remember one thing, and we've talked about this before. These people are blind. They're blind to the truth. They're blinded by the world. They're blinded by a lot of things, their greed, their money, whatever it is. And you never get mad at the blind man. That's the first rule. So when they don't want to know, you got to remember this isn't an argument to be won. This is just information to be shared. And so don't get frustrated. Don't give yourself a headache over it. Hey, it's between them and the truth. And if they don't want to acknowledge the truth, move on to the next person and continue to share the information. But don't let those who don't want to receive the truth in love that you're sharing with them get to you, because there's nothing you can do. That's really ultimately between them.
Well, Darrell, I mean, it doesn't really get to me. I am just sick of looking at all the lies and corruption and evil, and it's so obvious what's going on. We just need to abolish the whole system. It's rotten. It's like if you open up your refrigerator and there's maggots in a stew you made a week ago. You don't pick pieces of it out and eat it. You throw the whole stew away. How do we do that? How do we get the population to realize that it's a tissue of lies, a false reality, a great delusion? Here's the biggest problem I see us facing. Whether you're a Christian or not, whether you believe in Jesus Christ or not, if people would actually follow what Jesus said, our problems would be over very quickly. They would actually read what he said, what he did. But the system created a counterfeit, a Christianoid system that is fraudulent, greedy, corrupt, deceptive, pro-war, worldly, ninnying, dithering. It denies any type of corruption. It says only serve government, do whatever you're told.
Right,
and so people of conscience see that and say, I want nothing to do with this. See, that's another. So how do we change these Babylon churches? Go ahead.
Well, I think that's the key. And in fact, I got a couple scriptures for you. Galatians 5:1 clearly says it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourself be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. 1 Peter 2:16, live as a free man, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. See, the last time I was on your show Friday, there's about 4 or 5,000 people viewed the video you guys posted. There's a lot of comments on there questioning the validity of the Bible and God and Jesus. And I don't blame people for thinking that. I used to think that my whole life because I would see the hypocrisy in the church, and I would say, wow, if that's what a Christian is, that's the last thing I want to be. What I didn't realize is there's a lot of people in the church who still act like people in the world because they're not really Christians. I can say I'm a millionaire, but it doesn't make me a millionaire. I can say I'm a Christian, but it doesn't make me a Christian. If people truly knew who Christ was, what he stood for, and what he was really all about, they would not sit apathetically by while people vote about no prayer in school or no Ten Commandments on public property or abortion.
But that's my point, is the new Christianoid religion is about loving corruption, serving evil, dressing up, driving fancy cars, being glitter bugs.
Right. It's like this, Alex. What you see on TV is not true Christianity. They say, come to Christ. He'll give you health, wealth, and prosperity, right? He'll make you have a great life. In fact, I often use an example of 2 passengers on an airplane. If I go to a guy on an airplane and say, hey, put this parachute on, it's really going to improve your flight. You're going to have peace and joy and happiness. Man, it's going to be the greatest flight of your life. Well, the guy's skeptical because he can't understand why putting the parachute on is going to improve his flight. But in an experimental fashion, to see if his claim is true, he puts the parachute on. But what happens? In a few minutes, he starts to notice the weight of the parachute on his back. He can't lean back in the seat. It's cumbersome. He looks around. Other passengers are mocking him, making fun of him. So he peels the parachute off. He throws it on the ground. And as far as he's concerned, it'll be a long time until somebody puts one of those on him again. He's disillusioned, and he's bitter towards those who gave him the parachute because, as far as he was concerned, he was told an outright lie. But if instead I go to passenger 2 and I say, hey, put this parachute on because any minute you're going to jump out of this plane and this parachute's going to save your life from the jump to come, well, he doesn't care about the weight of the parachute, nor does he care if other people mock or make fun of him. In fact, he probably has sympathy towards those mocking him because he knows what their fate will be when they have to jump without the parachute. In the same way, when we tell people, come to Jesus, he'll solve all your problems, well, that's just not what he promised. He never said, in fact, he said becoming a Christian will make your life harder. It's a hard road. It's the narrow road. It's not an easy thing to do. So I would just encourage those people who think Christianity is a sham and a fraud. I would say you're right when it comes to religion. Jesus hated religion. He stood up to all the religious leaders of the day, called them sons of hell, brood of vipers, hypocrites, and so on, because they were bogged down into the law and the letter of law. They loved their power. They loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. So they didn't care about whether Jesus was fulfilling hundreds of prophecies right before their eyes. They didn't care he was performing miracles and so on. They just would try to dismiss it because they wanted to hang on to their control and their power and their money. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. So to get back to your original
And the one time Christ got mad was with the money changers. Tell folks that story.
Well, the bottom line is that, you know, when he came in and he turned over those money changers in the temple, their tables, okay, notice he didn't do it to everybody that was in the temple selling their wares. It wasn't about them selling wares in the temple, as most people would probably believe. No, it was because they turned the house of God into a den of thieves. These guys were the bankers of the day. They were the Federal Reserve of the day, and they had a monopoly on the coins that Jews could use to exchange for the perfect, spotless lamb to make their sacrifice. So, you know, they would, you know, hike up the price and the exchange rate on that because they knew they had the only coin that didn't have a face of an emperor or some other political leader, and that's the only coin that Jews would use to buy the spotless lamb to make the sacrifice. And, of course, they turned the house of God into a den of thieves. So, once again, the love of money is the root of all evil. And to get back to the original question, really the answer, setting God aside for a second, because obviously if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked ways, God would from heaven, and he'd heal our land. But because, setting that aside, it's the bankers. I think Ron Paul's on the right, and we need to, get on board with that and push for an audit of the Fed. Once those books are revealed and we see the trillions of dollars they've stolen from the American people, hey, maybe people would then wake up, they'd abolish the Fed, and we'd have an honest monetary system again.
Exactly. Look how far we've come from almost no one knowing about the Federal Reserve being the real power to the majority of Americans in Gallup polls saying, we know it's bad, let's abolish it, let's at least audit it. We are seeing major movement, but it's just not fast enough because the average person is in these phony 501c3 churches where they tell them government is God, do whatever government says. If the government says abort babies, do it. If the government says go to war, do it.